All right, and we back on the forecast. So, a lot of people are upset about the two officers in Indianapolis who shot and killed Aaron Bailey, and they end up not getting charged for it. And people are out here protesting as if they're surprised by the results. Now, let's go back and actually see what happened to the brother Aaron Bailey.
This is what's left of Aaron Bailey's car.
This is his last moments. The way he went out, it was horrible.
The video from his attorney.
We're frustrated, and we'd like to see the process move faster.
The rods represent the gunshots fired toward Bailey on June 29th. Based on the damage and how and where the bullets hit the vehicle, an engineering firm will be able to determine the possible location of the two Metro police officers when they fired their weapons.
It appears that the police were shooting from immediately behind the vehicle and behind and on the driver's side of the vehicle when they discharged their weapons.
The investigation into Bailey's death is now well into its second month. The Marion County Prosecutor's Office waiting on the completion of the IMPD internal report. Officers Carlton Howard and Michael Dension remain on administrative duty.
Are you concerned at all that the system, that the process will not work?
No, I don't feel like that. I feel like I got faith, and I feel like the truth will come out.
I do want justice on both ends. I mean, if they came with an answer, or just some type of answer to what happened that night, then maybe I could feel better about, what happened with the police officers and with my brother. But with no answers at this point, I kind of have to question it.
The family is also acknowledging the results of Bailey's newly released toxicology report. Blood and urine samples show that Bailey had cocaine and stimulants in his system on the night of his death.
It doesn't mean that he's just a nobody. Still that night, why did he end up dead? If Aaron did something wrong, he deserved to be in jail.
And now at 6, we have some breaking news coming into the RTV6 newsroom. As we were going on the air, we just received this statement. The Marion County Prosecutor's Office has just told us, in their words, our office has received IMPD's investigation and just this week received the coroner's report on the death of Mr. Aaron Bailey. In addition, Prosecutor Curry has directed investigators assigned to our office to follow up on the investigation, which may be pertinent to the investigation. This matter remains a priority for our office. More information will be provided on the anticipated next steps in the process as the investigative phase concludes. That is information coming in now from the prosecutor's office. We should also add, the family says that Mr. Bailey was working with a local church group on his personal issues and did not deserve to die.
So officers Carlton Howard and Michael Dension pulled over Aaron Bailey, and they never really said why they pulled him over. But apparently they pulled him over, and then he pulled off and led him on a chase. Then after Aaron Bailey crashed into a tree, the police officer said that when they approached him that he started reaching in his console for what they thought was a gun. And it turns out that the brother, of course, was unarmed, and the woman that was with him, they ended up arresting her. Now, even though the officers say that he was reaching into his console, and of course, I don't see any body cameras or anything, but they say he was reaching into his console. But when you look at the evidence, it shows that they were shooting from behind his car. They ended up shooting him in the back. Now, the story that the officers gave and the evidence that they found was so different that the people investigating said, we're going to have to get a special investigator, a special prosecutor on this case. And the police say they have their own investigation still going on whether if he violated rules or not, and if he should be punished as a police officer within their organization or not. Now, when you have situations like these, whether they decide to charge the police officers or whether they don't, they still have to portray the person who was murdered by the cops as a violent thug, a violent criminal. By the way, they don't have any record of murder or anything, but they have been arrested and have encounters with the police in the past. But we know how they love to bring up these people's history as if it has anything to do with the case. Now, in the cases where the police actually have longer records than the people that they shoot, they rarely bring up anybody's history, anybody's past. or if those people have been doing something positive. They never really bring those things up. But if they have a case where they can bring up somebody's criminal past, then they're going to do that.
So we found out quite a bit, and there's still a lot of questions about what exactly led to that shooting, and we're looking into everyone involved, including Aaron Bailey, the man shot dead by police. Now, here's what we do know. Aaron Bailey has been convicted of 11 felony charges and 19 misdemeanor charges since 1991. Those charges include theft, robbery, burglary, battery, prostitution, and numerous drug charges. Now, since 2014 alone, Bailey had been the subject of at least 16 incidents with the police. Now, we also looked into the history of the two police officers that fired their weapons. Their personnel records do not have any discipline reports filed against them.
In this case, they say, well, since this officer doesn't have a criminal history or a background, then we'll take that in consideration. But then you have people like Officer Betty Shelby, who shot and killed a man in the back, and even Donald Trump said it was wrong, and now they're going to remove that from her record, so that the next job she applies for, they don't see murderer on her resume.
A judge agreed to seal the record for a former Tulsa police officer acquitted of manslaughter. Betty Shelby shot and killed Terrence Crutcher when he didn't follow her commands back in September of last year. We told you in May a jury found her not guilty. Fox 23's Preston Jones talked with the DA and a legal expert about what the expungement means.
It's a fairly black and white issue with regard to the law.
Signed, sealed, and now expunged. District Attorney Steve Kunzweiler says since Betty Shelby was acquitted of manslaughter, he has no problem with the Judge LaFortune's decision to seal Shelby's record regarding the case.
When an accusation is made, an individual that has been exonerated, they ought to have their record cleaned. I don't want that for any particular individual. I mean, we have to respect the process that our court system has been set up for.
Neither Shelby nor her attorney were in court Wednesday morning for the decision, but the judge said all parties had signed off on the agreement, so Shelby's record will be cleared. In the petition, Shelby said she wanted her record sealed due to, quote, dangers of unwarranted adverse consequences as a result of the arrest information.
What happens next? All of the documents surrounding Betty Shelby's case will officially be sealed, put in the archives, and as long as they're not unsealed for the next 10 years, the state can officially destroy them like it never happened.
After so many years, if nothing comes up, then the court can destroy the records.
Former Assistant State Attorney General Tim Gilpin says many people want their record cleared for future jobs and opportunities.
If it's expunged, they can then answer this never occurred or just leave it off an application.
Shelby was acquitted in May, then resigned from the Tulsa Police Department. She's now a reserve deputy for the Rogers County Sheriff's Office.
She can get her record wiped clean. Meanwhile, somebody with a petty drug charge who may be trying to change their life can't even get a job because they got arrested for drug possession years ago. And Officer Betty Shelby can go out and apply for any police job, and that won't show up on her record. So, based on that and the officer's story that doesn't really match the evidence, Special Prosecutor Kenneth Cotter still decided not to press charges.
Beth, that announcement coming 4 months after that actual police-involved shooting in the city here. Now, it's coming from the special prosecutor who was announced back on August 23rd. That's after that shooting happened on June 29th. And they say they will not be charging the officers in this case. And they released a 16-page report that detailed all the information on that night. Again, the special prosecutor getting this case on August 23rd. And it was after Aaron Bailey was shot and killed by two IMPD officers after he drove away from a traffic stop and crashed. He was eventually shot by those two IMPD officers. Now, the special prosecutor in this case says they reviewed all the evidence, re-interviewed witnesses, and looked at the officers' statements. They said they also looked at the officers' work history and the training of the department and determined that there was no that they acted in self-defense, those two police officers. They say, in conclusion, to refute the claim of self-defense, the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt either the officer's fear of imminent serious bodily injury or death by Mr. Bailey was objective, unreasonable, or insincere. And they say, based on the results of the investigation, there is no evidence to refute either officer's claim that they were in fear of their lives. Back here live at the City County building right now, IMPD will continue investigating internally. They They've been doing that from the very beginning, but they couldn't move on to all those steps of the administrative review to see if these officers had broken any of IMPD policies in the shooting. That could take many more weeks. We are still waiting for comment from IMPD and the mayor's office tonight. They have not sent that to us.
Special Prosecutor Kenneth Cotter says the shooting was justified because you can't prove that they didn't fear for their life. But if you're that afraid, you need to turn in your gun and your badge. Now, even though I do say we need to become lawyers and judges, and we do because of situations like that, because even though these cops are rarely even charged with the crime, even when they are charged with the crime, we cannot stop there. We cannot be happy with just them being charged. Because even though it is rare to see a cop charged with the crime, it is even more rare to see a cop convicted. We can't just be happy when they're charged. Like with the case of Euree Martin. He was a mentally ill brother who was just walking down the street minding his own business, not doing nothing wrong. And someone called the police on him because he quote-unquote looked suspicious. And he ended up getting tasered to death.
Back in Georgia, a family in Washington County wants answers as to why their loved one died in law enforcement custody. News Channel 6's Renata Dubose digging deeper into this one. She's just back from Sandersville. And Renata, there really is still a lot that we just don't know.
Yes, Brad, but here's what we do know. The GBI is investigating what happened when Euree Lee Martin encountered deputies from the Washington County Sheriff's Office Friday. Now, those officers responded to a suspicious person, but in the end, that dispatch call left Martin dead.
It was very difficult to watch.
This amateur video shot Friday in Deep Step, Georgia, now has one Washington County family calling for more answers. We spoke with Annie Gilbert Gibbons, who says her uncle typically kept to himself.
And it seems to be some inconsistencies.
The GBI reports Washington County Sheriff's deputies went to the location on Deep Step Road after someone reported a suspicious person in town. That person was 58-year-old Euree Lee Martin.
The video, in my opinion, didn't support what was going on.
GBI also reported that, quote, deputies deployed a taser, but after the altercation, he appeared to be in respiratory distress, unquote. He was arrested and handcuffed too. He died shortly after at the scene.
Why was a taser used, and to the extent that it was used?
Gilbert Gibbons tells me her uncle Euree Lee was walking here on Deep Step Road from his home in Milledgeville to visit family in Sandersville. Now, my cell phone's GPS walking directions say that is a 9.5-hour trip. She says she was very concerned about her uncle's health when he encountered law enforcement because it was 90 degrees plus that day.
The only thing that my mother stated was that someone from 911 called her to say he was out there walking on the side of the road.
Okay.
And my mother, she identified exactly who he was. She made it known that he did have a mental illness.
After speaking with the family today, they understand how this case may mirror other nationally known cases, but they are not advocating protests and riots. They want answers first. Now, a special agent with GBI tells me there was an autopsy performed on Martin in Atlanta, but the medical examiner is going to do more investigating before a cause of death is determined.
So Euree Martin was walking to his family house, which was about 20 miles away, which his family says he did routinely. But on this day, that person calls the police for whatever reason. Now, even though he didn't do anything wrong, Deputy Rhett Scott, Michael Howard, and Sgt Lee Copeland responded and attempted to arrest him. Now, I don't know what they were arresting him for. I'm sure if you look at the police report, it'll say something like disorderly conduct or something like that. Now, these cops say they were forced to taser him because he didn't listen to them. I guess he didn't have his freedom papers with him or something. And so they were forced to tase him multiple times until he went in respiratory distress and ended up dying. Now, even though this man lay on the ground dying, as usual, they still had to flip him over and put him in handcuffs. It doesn't matter, severed spine, shot in the head. They still always have to roll you over and put you in handcuffs. Now, even though the district attorney in this case decided to indict these cops on multiple charges, that is not the end. Even when most of these cops go to trial, some of them pick bench trials where they can just go to a judge who they know is on their side. And even when they have jury trials, they still pick juries that they know would probably side with them. That's the reason why it's important for us to have black lawyers and black judges. We need black lawyers to make sure the jury selection is fair and diverse and our people is included. And we need black judges to make sure these jury selections have more of our people represented on them, especially in cases where we are the defendant and in cases like these with black victims. But at the end of the day, you won't get fairness until you have your own system, your own judicial system, your own police force to not even let it get to this point of having to march about it after somebody is dead. Until we have an economic base and we can be able to create jobs for ourselves, give ourselves opportunities to be prosperous. You have to have that economic base to be able to build the schools and fund the teachers for the schools. We aren't even able to control our kids' curriculum, what they learn in school right now. And all it takes is just starting by keeping the money within our own communities. If you got to buy something, if possible, buy it from a black business. Invest in black businesses so that more stores can open up. We could easily, right now, elect a board of successful black business leaders and just leaders in general, strictly to fund and help grow black businesses that we all can contribute to. We can do that right now. And at the end of the day, we really have no choice but to build our own economy. Because until we build a nation and protect that nation, we will continue to suffer the same results.
Indy's top cop says the FBI will conduct an investigation into the deadly officer-involved shooting of an unarmed black man. That civil rights investigation will center around Aaron Bailey, who was shot and killed last month. 24-hour News 8's Julian Grace is live in the newsroom tonight with more on that decision. Julian.
Well, Brooke, want to be very clear here. IMPD will still conduct its own internal investigation while the FBI will run its own inspection. Now, Chief Roach says he has confidence in the department's investigation, but that he reached out to the FBI a couple of days after the shooting. The tracks of the Aaron Bailey investigation are still being combed over by IMPD and now the FBI.
Let me start out by saying what a tragedy this is.
In the aftermath, there's been a newser.
It's really upsetting to lose a family member.
There's been a rally and town halls.
In response to the events of June 29.
Then there was this. Mayor Joe Hogsett took responsibility for the deadly shooting in front of a crowd at the Indiana Black Expo.
On June 29, 2017. An unarmed African-American man was shot and killed in the city of Indianapolis. I happened to be the mayor. I cannot undo what occurred on June 29th any more than I can remake our past. But I must be held accountable for what happened on June 29th, 2017, and I am.
Then came Tuesday morning's announcement that the FBI will be looking at the case.
No way the FBI can make a difference.
They will look at everything, the moments leading up to the encounter, the traffic stop, the short chase, and then the deadly shooting on West 23rd. Police say on that day, Bailey reached into his console, and officers later discovered he didn't have a gun. While the investigation runs its course, there's thought it may not make a difference.
I feel that this is something to try to appease some people that are upset.
Here's a reminder for you. The officers involved are currently on administrative leave.
We have 3 Washington County deputies. They could be facing murder charges. The district attorney believes the 3 are responsible for the death of Euree Martin. Martin was tased to death after walking through a neighborhood in July. 41 NBC's Edna Ruiz has the latest. Edna.
That's right, January. That investigation is finally closed. This afternoon, District Attorney Hayward Altman stated that based on evidence, he wants the 3 deputies indicted, but that'll be up to Washington County grand jury in December. Altman says Martin did nothing wrong.
Mr. Martin, as far as we can establish, had done nothing wrong.
On July 7th, Euree Martin was walking to his family's home. He was then stopped by Washington County deputies after being called a suspicious person.
He was simply walking down the road. He broke no law, and what happened after that will be determined in a court of law.
Martin died in the hands of deputies Michael Howell, Henry Copeland, and Rhett Scott. He was tased to death.
Based on his definition of medical examination, it came from a heart attack based on homicide.
Once Washington County Sheriff Thomas Smith found out, he fired all 3 deputies. But a termination is far from their worries.
Based on my investigation, or my interpretation of the investigation of the facts presented to me, it is the most appropriate remedy in this case to present this case to the grand jury in Washington County for purposes of criminal indictment.
District Attorney Hayward Altman is seeking multiple charges against all 3 deputies, some of those including felony murder, involuntary manslaughter, and aggravated assault.
This is not presented to them for a fact-finding situation. This criminal indictment will be presented to the grand jury for purposes of criminal indictment.
Martin's family and their lawyers were also present. They were pleased to see the DA and law enforcement seek justice.
So we're a number of steps away, but this first step is one that we've seen so often be missed and not accomplished. So this first step gives us some encouragement, absolutely.
And the Martin family hasn't filed a civil lawsuit. They want to wait it out and move forward with the criminal side. Their lawyer also stated that this isn't a matter of race, although deputies were white and Martin was African American. The grand jury will rule on the indictment on December 19th.
He just found that. He ain't had nothing on him. You see what he doing. He showed it to him behind his back. He put that on that man. He put it on him.
Member of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force has pled guilty to sex crimes against 2 children. Bruce Harvey, a former Madison County detective, pled guilty to multiple charges today, including possessing child pornography. Prosecutors say Harvey used his position of trust as an officer and as a karate instructor to sexually exploit 2 female karate students, beginning when they were both 13. Harvey was arrested back in May when investigators found evidence on a tape in his home that dated back to February of 2007.